This new moon in Pisces is amplified by a variety of celestial events. One is a stellium in Pisces. We'll talk a little bit more about what that is here in a second, as well as a square with Jupiter and an opposition with the midheaven that is in Virgo. So we're going to talk about all this and more in the upcoming video. All right, so this new moon in Pisces on February 28th, 2025 is a very interesting one in that it is promising enhanced spiritual communication and the ability to turn knowledge into wisdom. During the new moon, the sun and the moon are always conjunct, meaning that they are right on top of one another. And in this case, the moon and the sun are at 9 degrees in Pisces. Interesting enough, the number 9 in the tarot is associated with the Hermit card. And the energy of this particular new moon is very much very similar to the Hermit card energy. So in its bright side, which luckily that is what I think that we're dealing with more, is the energy of a conscientious retreat. So the hermit goes into his cave to research, to meditate, to go within, to take stock, to analyze, to have some space from the ongoing of everyday life and the busyness of socially interacting in order to be able to gain perspective and to digest all of the knowledge that he's acquired. And then when he has come to some conclusions, once he's integrated that research, then he can come out of his cave, and you can see there that he's holding a lantern that has the Merkaba, the six-sided star. And this is a sacred geometry that's associated with our auric field, the sacred feminine energy that goes down and the sacred masculine energy that flows up. And so he's essentially taking the knowledge, turns it into wisdom, and then from that wisdom, because he's embodied the knowledge that he knows into something that's practical, into something that's experienced, into something that's felt, then that's able to be transmuted and shared as true light. Before knowledge is wisdom, before we integrate what it is that we know into experience, into some sort of practical knowledge, it's just intellectualized at that point. And one could say that it's just ego at that point. So this is a new moon that's really truly teaching us how to go from the head and sink into the heart, or more appropriately, how to have a balanced relationship between what we know and what we feel. So I want to get back to the stellium. A stellium is when 3 or more celestial bodies are all sitting together. And in this particular case, not only is the sun and the moon in Pisces, but also Saturn is at 20 degrees in Pisces, Mercury is at 24 degrees in Pisces, and the North Node is at 28 degrees in Pisces, as well as Neptune, which is right on top of the North Node, at 28 degrees in Pisces. So that's a lot of Pisces energy, obviously. The North Node is the energy of our soul's mission, what it is that we're working towards. It can represent our long-term goals, aspirations, and what our heart truly desires. Neptune rules Pisces. So Neptune is the ruling planet of all this Piscean energy, and it's very much at home right here where it is sitting hand in hand with the North Node. So Neptune, as well as all this Piscean energy, it is associated with intuition, our spiritual growth, our spiritual connection and communication, and intuition and imagining the possibilities. Pisces is the last sign in the zodiac. So it is said that this is when we have matured. This is when we have gleaned all of the experience that we have experienced through the other zodiac signs. And then when we come to Pisces, the hero's journey is now complete. The hero now is a different person than when he left to go on to his fool's journey in the first step that was in Aries. So Pisces is spiritual maturity. And this is where we need to also talk a little bit about the shadow side of Pisces, because all the zodiac sides also have a tripping point, right? So with spiritual communication, with intuition and imagination, there can also be a very unhealthy blurring of the line between our imaginative, our cognitive reality, what we believe to be true, versus our three-dimensional reality, our physical reality. And when these two things are in opposition to one another, when we don't know the difference between our imaginative reality and our physical reality, that is when delusion and illusion come into play. And with this particular new moon, we are given the opportunity to call into question some of our beliefs and our assumptions, because illusion and delusions play a very heavy part in our spiritual growth and evolution, or I should say, they play a very integral part in the healing that needs to be done for our spiritual growth and evolution. Not coincidentally enough, the number 9, which is associated with the Hermit card and is the degree at which the Sun and the Moon is in Pisces right now, also represents a completion of a cycle, as does Piscean energy in general. So all of us are feeling to some degree or another that we have come to the end of a phase, that we can put a bow on it, lock it up tight. We can, throw away the key. There are some things that have come to a close. So with that resolution, we are now being asked to imagine the possibilities. And this is a really beautiful energy for a new moon to be in, because new moons are always about, or I should say, traditionally they are about new beginnings. So in the full moon, when the moon is full and you're seeing her in all of her brightness up in the sky, she's in full expression. She has taken everything from the last lunar cycle, and it is being expressed. In the new moon, it's the opposite. She's pulling in energy. And so as we're pulling in the energy, the hermit in us is asking us to take stock, to reflect, and to imagine the possibilities, because now we're getting ready to embark on something that would be akin to the Page of Cups. The Page of Cups is a card that is about imagining the possibilities as well as expecting as well as holding the possibility for unexpected surprises, just like the fish that's popping up out of the cup. So this is asking us to take stock and to take a look at the stories. And one of the most common illusions that we hold is that our past dictates our future. And in this new moon, this is giving us the opportunity to write a new script. The past does not have to dictate our new future, and we can imagine what the other possibilities might be. So something that I wrote down here is the healing spiral. That's something that came to me when I was taking a look at this the astrology chart, is that healing is a spiral. We often think of healing as a goal, a destination, or awakening or spiritual evolution as being almost like a bell curve in some way. But that's not really how it unfolds. It unfolds more like a spiral or a DNA helix, if you will. It unravels. And what happens is we will revisit the same themes, same challenges, same problems. And so often, I can't even tell you how many times I've heard this said when I've spoke to students and my clients, where it's like, I thought I already dealt with this challenge. I thought I already learned this lesson. Why am I continuously being tested? And that's because that karma, the cause and effect, not necessarily judgment and punishment, which is another thought about karma that is kind of a misunderstanding, is that it's not about judgment and punishment. It's simply cause and effect. That as we are unwinding those old stories, as we're healing the way that we would used to show up in a relationship, or the way that we used to respond to certain things in our lives that were really unhelpful or uncomfortable, we are different. So as we become more and more different, those things will show up less and less. But it isn't typically a snap of the finger where all of a sudden we learned a lesson and so now we get rewarded with not having to face those challenges anymore. It's more about we get to face those challenges, but we are a different human being, therefore we respond differently. And now we have a special guest. This is Wednesday. She wanted to help us with our reading today. So let's get back to the cause and effect. So this new moon is asking us, how might I respond to my circumstances differently in order to have the best possible chances of getting the effect that I want versus an unconscious reaction? So the hermit in us is asking us to go within the cave, to investigate, to research, to meditate. So our intuition is going to be on an incredibly amplified level as we sit with this new moon energy. So if there's any possible way that you can create some time and space in your schedule to meditate, to gestate, to go into that cave, so to speak, and to take time to reflect on what it is that you really want next in your life, now would be the prime opportunity to do that. The next thing that we have here is we have a beautiful trine with Mars that is in Cancer at 17 degrees. So with all of this reflection, we're being asked to give ourselves a bit of self-care. Mars is associated with Aries, and it's about action, it's about charisma, it's about passion. And when it's with Cancer, Cancer is about nurturing, and it's associated with the mother archetype. So as this sun and moon that's in Pisces is trining Mars that is in Cancer, it's also asking us to imagine the possibilities, but don't forget that that with whatever lofty goals or aspirations you might have, that it's really important that you are nurtured and supported. And with the sun and moon opposing the midheaven in Virgo, we will have a heightened ability to intellectualize our emotions. And what this means is that we will have a better ability to have emotions without becoming emotions, or what I always call getting swept away in the ocean of emotion. Virgo is a very pragmatic energy in and of itself, and the midheaven is usually more associated with how it is that we are aligning our actions. And Virgo is associated with analyzing, discerning, and organizing information and putting everything into its proper place. So because of that, we will have the ability to that even if there's a lot of sensation, even if there's a lot of intensity emotionally going on, or if we have very challenging circumstances, this Virgo energy will allow us to take a step back and be a bit more pragmatic with our experiences and be able to look at the emotions from a witness consciousness, to be able to take a look at the emotions as more as like that's just information versus it having to be the defining feature of our entire experience. The midheaven in Virgo will give us a heightened ability to discern, to analyze, and to quote unquote sort things out. And finally, that brings me to a square with Jupiter that is in Gemini. So the squares are always energy where it feels like a little bit of friction, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. Friction allows us to move forward. If there's no friction between your tires and the road, you end up sliding off the road. And the trines help smooth things out a bit so that there isn't so much friction that we can't move forward. So the balance between the trine of the moon and Mars, as well as the square between the moon and Jupiter, is a really lovely balance of energy that allows us to have just enough friction to keep us on our toes, so to speak, enough friction that allows us to not be complacent. But the trine gives us enough support so that we can move forward in a way that isn't so frictiony. So it's less conflict, less inner conflict. So with the square in Jupiter and Gemini, we're going to have the expanded ability to communicate and to process this information. So Virgo is very good at organizing information, and Gemini is really good at, okay, bye-bye, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And Gemini is really good at being able to take in the big picture. The only thing about the square with Gemini is that we have to be careful about falling into extremes. So that is the shadow side of Gemini, is that the Gemini will tend to go from one extreme to another and then find the balance in between. What would be a more helpful way of using that Jupiter and Gemini energy is to take a look at where in the past, either recent past or the distant past, that we have already experienced the extremes, and then take a look and see how we might be able to balance those responses in the future. That would be a better way of using it versus having to relive extremes in order to remember the lessons that we may have already learned. This is a energy that is going to give us a clear vision of the next few steps, even if we don't know what the long journey is going to look like. You don't have to know exactly what the end result's going to be like in order to take the next few steps. So it's like, basically, you just need to know how to set your sails. You don't need to know exactly where those sails are going to take you. If you just have a good understanding of the general feeling, the general experience, the general kind of job or relationship or whatever it is that you're wanting to attract, that's enough with this new moon. What I'm reminded of, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's the philosopher Rumi. He said something to the effect of, if you start on the path will reveal itself. And that is very much the energy of this Pisces new moon, where we don't have to necessarily know where the path is going to take us. We just have to choose a general direction, and the steps that come after that will reveal themselves. So with all of that being said, let's take a look and see, get some more specifics using the tarot on how we might be able to utilize this new moon energy to serve our best and highest good. And I always ask folks that are joining me in these videos, just set the intention for yourself, because this is a generalized reading, that whatever part of this reading is most pertinent to you and your circumstances, that intuitively you're going to know what part is really wanting you to, like, what message your higher self is really wanting you to receive. All right. And one more. All right, so we have 3 major arcana cards that come up. Major arcana cards are the hero's journey. So it's like the Fool's card, the World card, the Hermit card that we just talked about. And then the minor arcana are like 4 of Cups, 5 of Wands, 6 of Pentacles, things of that nature. Those are more of the details. So when you have 3 major arcana cards come up, it means that we're at a pretty big milestone. And so there is definitely some endings that are in play. And we know that because the very first card that comes up is the Death card. This does not necessarily mean physical death. Sometimes people get scared when this comes up. This is just simply that there is a letting go, that there is an ending that's at play, and to honor that ending. And the Judgment card is the card that comes up next. Now, this is reversed, meaning that there might be some folks out there who they're not wanting to let this go, or potentially we're in a place in a grief cycle where we have not yet come to an acceptance around what needs to be allowed to let go, or we're processing that grief. Because the Judgment card is about hearing the call, answering the call, moving on, and doing what it is that needs to be done in order to fulfill a purpose, a mission, or an intention. It's about hearing the whispers of our intuition over the yells of the conscious mind. But when it's reversed, it means that we have some resistance to that, and that it would be a good idea to use this very heightened, intuitive, spiritual connection of this new moon to quiet the yells of the logical mind. The logical mind is meant to be in service to the right side of the brain. It's meant to be in service to the imagination and our intuition. It takes that information and then it sorts it out. Most of the time we have been taught to do that the opposite way, to logically reason what it is that is reasonable, and then allow our imagination to make the best of the limited conditions that the logic gives to it. And when we do that, we are cutting ourselves very short, because the logical mind does not have access to all of the information. The more holistic, imaginative side of the mind, our intuition, is able to reach beyond what our physical senses are able to grasp, and able to discern on a much higher level what all the possibilities are. It does not mean that we have to throw logic out the window, but it means that we need to start putting the cart behind the horse, not the cart before the horse. So don't cut yourself short, folks. And the next card that comes up is a card that's very that's relevant to all of this, which is the Hanged Man. And what's really positive about this is that the Hangman is not upside down. Like, I know that that's kind of a, but when the Hangman is like this, it's upside down. When it's in its right form here, a light aspect, we'll say, it means that we're ready for a new perspective. We're ready to look at things a little bit differently. We might have some resistance here, but the discomfort, this is probably that square that we were talking about with Jupiter, that friction, is enough to make us reach beyond our comfort zone and to consider a different possibility, to consider different solutions, to consider that there might be other people that might have a witness perspective outside of our circumstances that might allow us to have a different mindset about a certain circumstance or situation. But all of this is coming around to allow us to come to a place of acceptance of what has been, so that we can step into the possibilities of what can be. So this is a very cleansing new moon. It can be very refreshing. It really comes down to how much resistance we are putting into holding on to things from the past, and how much fear we're putting into the future. If we can take a few steps back and create a little bit of space and sink into that calm place within our system where we are able to hear the whispers of the intuition that is calling us to imagine new possibilities, and then allow the logic to work in service with the imagination to research and discern in what way those possibilities could be birthed into reality. This new moon, if we can do all of that, and I know that sounds like it's kind of a long list, but really it's all just part of the same process. If we can do that, then this new moon could truly be a magical new start, a magical milestone, as 3 major arcana cards that come up in a row would indicate. All right, folks, I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. We're going to take a look at this full moon. Let me know in the comments below how this resonated for you. And of course, it would be so helpful if you would hit that like icon. Just let me know if you liked the video, and the bell icon, and subscribe if you felt that this video was informative or entertaining at all. And that really helps other people find these videos as well. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.